latitudes, probably.
Yeah.
Today, we're diving into a time when map making really shifted gears from, well, guesswork to a genuine, measurable science.
Yeah, and that transformation, it really gained momentum in the 10th century, centered in the intellectual hubs of the medieval Islamic world. Think Baghdad under the Abbasids. Our sources are pretty clear on how Muslim geographers kind of orchestrated this massive shift. They took math, they took astronomy, and applied them rigorously, really rigorously. And that led to this revolutionary system, standardized latitude and longitude grids on maps.
Right. And for you listening, the key thing to hold on to here is this. That mathematical grid, the very framework underpinning, well, every map and GPS you use now, it's a direct inheritance from this tradition. These scholars didn't just draw the world, they built the system to measure it. Okay, let's unpack this.
So the fundamental difference, right, between earlier maps and what was happening in the 10th century, it's about intention. Earlier maps might look nice, maybe symbolic, but they weren't consistent, not scientifically. The Abbasid scholars, they demanded rigor. They treated map-making not as art, but as a high science. The maps absolutely had to be measurable, comparable, and crucially, navigable, really usable.
So it wasn't just about looking pretty, it was about function. Sounds like they were creating, I don't know, standardized operating manuals for the known world.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. And this whole scientific project, it stood on the shoulders of giants, you could say. They built on Greek astronomy, which had been refined significantly, actually, by scholars in India. But these 10th century Muslim scholars, they took that knowledge and just ran with it. Huge investments in observatories, refining calculations for the Earth's size, and they developed the complex math needed to, accurately project a sphere onto a flat map, which is not easy.
No, definitely not. And the grid system itself, those longitude and latitude lines, that was the practical key unlocking all that theory, wasn't it? Our sources really hammer home that this grid let them calculate distances across huge stretches of land and sea with what they call surprising accuracy for the time. It's the difference between saying it's about 5 days' walk and giving an actual coordinate.
Precisely, a defined point in space.
So when we look at who actually put these grids into practice, we kind of see two main figures highlighted, representing different approaches maybe, the functionalist and the theoretician. Let's start with the functionalist. Al-Istakhri, a Persian geographer. What was his main goal with his maps?
Al-Istakhri. His famous work, the Kitab al-Masalik wal-Mamalik, Book of Roads and Kingdoms. Yeah, it shows that functional approach perfectly. His maps weren't meant to be these grand, decorative worldviews. They were diagrams, tools for administration, trade, travel, very practical. And deliberately regional, designed to be used like on the ground.
Focusing regionally. That must have helped deal with the inevitable distortion you get trying to flatten the whole globe onto one map, right?
Absolutely. Smart move. By keeping his maps focused on specific regions and applying the grid really carefully within those areas, he got crucial local accuracy. His maps clearly showed roads, rivers, cities, borders, all that practical stuff. And this grid-based precision, it made running an empire easier. Clearer taxes, more reliable trade routes, safer travel. Big deal.
Okay, so if Istakhri was making the user manuals, then Al-Biruni, he was like the one writing the core code. He's presented as maybe the most brilliant theoretical scientist of that whole era, taking mapping beyond artistry, as one source puts it.
Al-Biruni was, well, obsessed might not be too strong a word. Obsessed with mathematical precision. He famously calculated the Earth's circumference with stunning accuracy, used trigonometry, measured the angle of the horizon from a mountaintop. Just brilliant problem solving. But for cartography, his huge contribution was really nailing down the math connecting the sphere of the Earth to the flat map.
Spherical geometry. That sounds pretty abstract. What was the breakthrough insight there? What did it let map makers do?
Okay, think about it like this. Mapping the globe is like trying to peel an orange and lay the peel flat without tearing it. Impossible, right? You always get distortion somewhere. Al-Biruni was among the first to truly master map projection, the mathematical rules for deciding how you manage that distortion, which bits you prioritize keeping accurate. He calculated precise coordinates for dozens, maybe hundreds of cities. His grasp of projection, it was centuries ahead of much of Europe.
Wow. And this meant, what, for someone using the maps? Like a sailor?
It meant a sailor could potentially figure out their position on the open sea just by observing the stars and using Al-Biruni's coordinate system and calculations, basically navigating by fixed mathematical points in the sky and on the map.
That's incredible.
It really is. His work cemented the longitude and latitude grid as a proper scientific instrument, not just lines on paper. It showed what standardized high-precision geography could actually achieve.
And that potential, I guess, is what fuels the next big step, this centralized effort. We shift from these individual geniuses to a massive state-sponsored project in Baghdad. Baghdad becomes this, like, global hub for geography.
Yeah, it was incredibly organized, systematic, really ambitious data gathering. The Abbasid Caliphate basically funded the world's first, you could say, analog big data project for geography. They didn't just rely on one scholar's view. They sent out teams, compiled reports from travelers, merchants, sailors across their massive empire and beyond.
Wait a second, though. Didn't Ptolemy's Geographia already exist from ancient Greece? And didn't it use a kind of grid? Why the need for this huge Abbasid project? What was wrong with Ptolemy?
That's a really important point. Ptolemy was foundational, absolutely. But his coordinates, well, they were often based on rough estimates, traveler tales that might be exaggerated or misunderstood, sometimes just inaccurate calculations. The Abbasid scholars, they started with Ptolemy, sure, but they subjected every single coordinate, every coastline, to intense scientific checking. They used newer methods like triangulation, precise astronomical observations, actual ground measurements where possible, to verify or, more often, correct thousands of locations.
Okay, so they weren't just copying, they were verifying and it's upgrading massively.
Right.
The result then was this definitive, comprehensive master map drawn with that verified grid
Yeah.
that essentially standardized the known world into measurable units.
Yeah.
Based on science, not just stories. It's kind of staggering to think about that level of organized effort just for geographical data back then.
And it really paid off, this standardized, verifiable way of mapping, with coordinates allowing for repeatable results. This was common practice in the Islamic world centuries, literally centuries, before Europe widely adopted similar systematic approaches.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, though. To really get the scale of this and the drive behind it, we need to look past just trade and administration, crucial as they were. The sources point to something else, don't they? A deeply ingrained religious need driving this incredible scientific precision.
That's the fascinating twist, isn't it? The ultimate motivator, perhaps. Yes, the caliphate needed good maps for ruling and trading, but the absolute non-negotiable demand for extreme geographical accuracy, that came from needing to determine the Qibla, the precise direction of the Kaaba in Mecca, for prayer from anywhere on earth.
Because the daily prayers 5 times a day and the orientation of every single mosque built across this vast empire, everything had to face Mecca. And you need the most accurate calculation possible for that direction, that shortest path on a sphere.
Exactly. And finding the Qibla isn't just drawing a straight line on a flat map because the Earth is round. Determining that direction means calculating the Great Circle route, the shortest curved path over the globe's surface between where you are and Mecca. And that required seriously advanced spherical trigonometry. It demanded the absolute most precise measurements of latitude and longitude for both your location and for Mecca itself.
Wow. So the push for spiritual accuracy literally forced the science of geography to new heights. It made high-level mathematical geography essential, a part of daily religious and civic life.
It embedded it right into the fabric of society.
Okay, so the Abbasids established this incredibly precise science, driven partly by this religious need. How does that knowledge then travel? How does it end up influencing the European age of discovery centuries later?
The transfer was pretty direct, actually, and vital. It happened mainly as libraries in Islamic Spain, Al-Andalus, were accessed by European scholars. Texts were translated into Latin, so European mapmakers got their hands on these advanced grid-based maps, the astronomical tables, the mathematical treatises, and this knowledge spread. You can see its influence quite clearly in major European works that followed, like the famous Catalan Atlas from 1375. It incorporates elements derived from this tradition.
And the core genius, again, we keep coming back to it, is the grid system making maps repeatable and verifiable.
That's the heart of the legacy. Before the system became standardized, two different map makers drawing the same coastline might produce wildly different results based on their skill, their sources, their assumptions. But once you have an agreed-upon grid with coordinates, any cartographer using the same coordinates should draw the same features in the same place. It brings objectivity. It really ended the era where maps were primarily artistic interpretations and launched the age of mathematical, verifiable geography.
Which means, without the groundwork laid by these 10th century Muslim geographers providing that verifiable mathematical framework, later explorers, your Columbuses, your Magellans, they wouldn't have had reliable coordinates to work from, would they? They might have been sailing much more blindly, relying on guesswork rather than charts grounded in, well, math.
Their incredible voyages of exploration absolutely relied on inheriting these standardized, verifiable mapping systems that had been developed and refined, largely starting in places like Baghdad. They stood on those foundations.
This has been a fantastic deep dive. We've seen that 10th century Muslim geographers weren't just sketching the world, they were creating the essential scientific language, the very framework for modern geography.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's such a clear example, isn't it? Where a deeply felt specific religious need, calculating the Qibla, became this powerful engine. It forced the best minds to tackle incredibly complex math problems about spheres and measurement. And the result, it wasn't just about prayer direction. It helped create the measurable, predictable, navigable world we all live in today.
It really leaves us with a compelling thought, doesn't it? Something for you, the listener, to maybe ponder. What other seemingly local specific needs, maybe cultural, maybe spiritual, maybe something else entirely, past or present, what other needs like that have acted as unsung drivers for huge, world-changing scientific leaps? We definitely encourage you to look deeper into the sources. It's amazing how those simple lines on old paper literally reshaped our understanding of the planet.